Every single time there is the possibility of new infrastructure aid to come in, right? Oh, okay, well, we're going to let concrete come in so that you guys can rebuild housing, so you guys can build water desalination plants, et cetera, et cetera. Every single time that happens, what does Hamas do? They take the concrete, they use it to build their tunnels underground, like billions of dollars worth of concrete that they use to build their tunnels so that they can move soldiers and move missiles around without getting destroyed by the IDF. So what does the IDF do in response to that? Okay, well, we're not going to allow any more concrete to go into Gaza. We're just not going to let it happen. Yeah, I don't think passion is inherently bad. In this setting, it absolutely is. What is the best way that Israel could respond here? I haven't seen a good response to that. There's obviously got to be some better way. There's got to be. There's got to be. But what is it? Yeah. All right, we're going to watch the Cenk Uygur versus Piers Morgan thing. Strap in, folks. The Hassan interview was pretty interesting, but I don't know what Cenk's take and everything is.
Joining me now to discuss this is the founder of the world's most influential progressive online.
Joining
me now to discuss this is the founder of the world's most influential progressive online channel, The Young Turks, a Democratic presidential hopeful. That's Cenk Uygur. Cenk, great to have you on the program. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I've been following your tweets with interest this week. You've been getting increasingly angry, I think it'd be fair to say. You said, I'm now enormously frustrated by US and Israeli government's barbaric acts in Gaza. I will not be shy in sharing that opinion on Piers Morgan's show today. Why are you so frustrated?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I didn't expect the framing that you put on this segment, and it's framing like that. That's disgusting. So I don't see what this has anything to do with anti-Semitism. I formed Young Turks and TYT with two Jewish friends who are some of my friends growing up. We've known each other and been brothers for over 40 years now. So I think what Hamas did is disgusting. I cry for those Israeli innocent civilians. But do I see you guys crying for Palestinians? I mean, Chris Christie was just on here treating it like it's no big deal because what, Palestinian lives don't matter? I think the real bigotry here is saying that Palestinians, we can kill 3 times as many of them already. And this is the appetizer. Netanyahu and his barbaric government have not even started the entree of murder and death and mayhem they're about to do. And that's somehow okay, killing 3 times as many Palestinian civilians, let alone the occupation, which is bigotry by definition. We say that everyone in the world can defend themselves, can have their own state, can have sovereignty, except the Palestinians. And the reasoning behind that is the Palestinians are what? They're what? The idea is that they are savages and that Muslims are too violent and cannot control themselves.
Jesus. Okay, so Cenk is coming out of here straight out the you're right at the starting gun going hard. Holy shit. He's actually more unhinged in his delivery here than Hassan was.
So they must be occupied for 56 brutal, disgusting years. So I've had enough of the bigotry against Muslims and Palestinians, and I need you to speak out against that instead of covering every outrageous, atrocious action of the right-wing government of Israel and going, oh, it's anti-Semitism. No, and there is global anti-Semitism. There's anti-Semitism here in this country. 2 synagogues were shot up, Pittsburgh and in Southern California. We fight against that all the time. But then whenever Israel is criticized, people go, oh, no, it's anti-Semitism. No, there's real anti-Semitism. Instead of attacking that, all you guys ever do is hide behind the veil of anti-Semitism. Do you know why Palestinians might not like Israelis? Because they've been oppressed for 56 straight years.
I hear you. And let me respond. I'm not you guys.
Okay, so first off, just pro tip, all right, for anyone out there. Pro tip. If you guys ever get into streaming, or even if you're going to get into a conversation with someone in real life, right? Especially if there's other people like involved, right? If it's like a conversation between you and like one or two other people, and then there's some other people that are mostly being quiet, whoever maintains, the like calmest attitude, most times will be the optical winner, right? Like you're calm, you're collected, you're just stating the facts as they are in these kinds of conversations, which goes a long, 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 long way towards getting your point across, right? If you come off as unhinged, if you come off as just like kind of crazy and wanting to shout the other person down, or like too emotional, people don't listen to you nearly as much as they would otherwise. So Cenk is as correct as he might be in some aspects of this, right? Like we shouldn't look at Palestinians as like vile savages that want to kill as many Jews as possible. And if you support Palestinians, then you're like a anti-Semite. There are people that think that, and you should push back against that. But that also doesn't mean that you should go the exact opposite, like crazy direction, and actually be anti-Semitic or anything like that. Yeah, I don't think passion is inherently bad. In this setting, it absolutely is.
I don't think I fit into any neat fit on this issue at all. B, I've actually covered this story, I think, more fairly than most people. I've had many pro-Palestinian voices I've given a huge platform for. They've been getting enormous audiences, from Bassem Youssef to others. And I've done that quite deliberately, because I think these voices are important to be heard, including yours. I certainly wasn't accusing you, by the way, or your organization of anti-Semitism. I just think I have found it, as somebody who's always identified as liberal myself, I've found it very dispiriting to see people who call themselves liberals whose instant response, it seemed to me, to one of the worst terror attacks we've ever seen was to immediately side with the place where these attacks have been launched from. Now,
people, like, you can say all the most accurate and factual things in the entire world, but if the framing is, or the focus is right after a horrific event, right? Like if directly like on 9/11, if you're like, well, if America hadn't been over there, this wouldn't have happened, right? Like people are going to look at you sideways, because why aren't you just like, well, the framing of it is just so strange, right? Right now we still have bodies that are warm, and you're focusing on that. Or like right after 9/11, like where's the Norm Macdonald let's see if we can find this super quickly.
Well, I can't say my friend's name, but he said his biggest fear is that ISIS or some terrorist group like that would get a hold of a dirty bomb and explode it over a major city within the United States and kill tens of millions of people. Because then the blowback against innocent Muslims would be absolutely terrible.
Yeah, that's horrific.
That's true.
Okay, let's do some jokes.
Like they don't understand the joke there is like the immediate feeling should be like, oh man, this is a horrible terrorist attack, instead of like that should be the immediate feeling that you get, like, oh man, I can't believe how horrible this terrorist attack was. They slaughtered tens of millions of people with a dirty bomb. Think of the Muslims that will be, profiled as a result, instead of, hey, there's 10 million people that die, dude. Like the framing absolutely matters, especially when you're going to be the kind of person who's going to be on, national media on a regular basis, and you're going around and you're trying to, push advocacy for something. Like, yeah, maybe you can like throw that in there a little bit, but if that's your main focus, it feels like you're focusing on the wrong thing at that moment in time. Right? We can absolutely talk about how bad it is for Palestinians. We can absolutely talk about how bad it is that like the Israeli Defense Force will bomb places that they seemingly shouldn't, right? And we could talk about all the reasons why they might do that, or why they might be justified, or why they might not be justified, right? We could talk about the concept of the open air prison, et cetera, et cetera. But like, none of that's going to take away from the fact that the Hamas group did slaughter a bunch of actually just like totally innocent people who had nothing to do with any of the war crimes, right? People want to quote Michael Brooks on all of this, where he's talking about like analysis doesn't mean justification or whatever but Michael Brooks also said, be ruthless to institutions, but be kind to people, right? It's like this selective quote farming that they'll do for people like Martin Luther King as well, right? Where they'll bring up the riots are the language of the unheard, but they also don't want to like recognize that MLK also was wholly against rioting and violence. Politics turned me off intellectually because there's a lot of generalizations instead of hard data. Well, I don't disagree with that necessarily. I think that on a lot of things politically, you're going to have to contend with you're going to have to talk about the generalizations. You're going to have to talk about the feels of people, right? Because not everything comes down to hard data, right? Not everything is going to come down to hard data. Not everything, it's going to come down to values and the philosophy behind why you choose to do one thing instead of another with, your allocated funds. Like these are things that you're going to have to, like you could have a choice between two things that are good, but under different philosophical outlooks, Would your perspective be different if this happens in the West Bank? Just curious. If the exact same thing happened in the West Bank, I don't think I would have that much of a different. If it was like, if there was some terrorist group that went out and just started like slaughtering civilians, no, I don't think that there's ever any justification for just the targeting of civilians wholesale, like Hamas did, And when you literally see Israeli civilians getting slaughtered, first response can't be they had it coming. Yeah, exactly.
I don't tar all Palestinians with the brush of being Hamas at all. And in fact, the sooner Hamas are out of there, the better for the Palestinian people and the world. But I just think the only human response you can have is, as you did, by the way, to your credit, is it was disgusting what happened on October the 7th. Now, the question then becomes, what is a proportionate response by Israel? Not just to the terror attacks of October the 7th, but obviously there is now a huge ongoing escalation in what has been, as you rightly say, a 56-year war, effectively, in varying degrees over that period. And that's where I think I'm struggling to see how a ground invasion by Israel, with all that would entail, particularly mass deaths of Palestinian civilians, how that is going to do anything for any peaceful resolution to this. I think it will have the opposite effect.
Yes. So let's take it one at a time. First of all, as you rightly point out, on Young Turks, we covered the atrocious actions of Hamas right from the get-go, and we condemned it as fully as anyone can possibly condemn it. Because not only are they killing those poor, innocent Israelis that didn't do anything, those little babies and the grandmothers, it's disgusting what they did. But on top of that, they're ruining the Palestinian cause. They've burned the moral high ground to cinders. And then on top of that, they smear all people of Muslim background like myself. And then it leashes this unleashes this bigotry of anti-Muslim bigotry throughout the world that I'm sick of. So screw Hamas and their barbarism, okay? Now, in terms of a proper reaction, yes, you need to get those hostages out. So now...
Also, like, and someone else can, like, if there's evidence to the contrary, then I'm totally willing to change my opinion on this. But I feel like I've seen way less anti-Semitism, especially in the past, like, I want to say, like, since like 2018, 2019, like, since around then, that was like the last time I saw major Islamophobia on a regular basis. But right now I do see, like, anti-Israeli sentiment, calling them bloodthirsty monsters who just want to kill as many brown kids as possible, colonizers, they all deserve death. I see that way more than I see any Islamophobia, right? Like, this feels like the how people will bring up constantly the Iraq War, right, as an example of why U.S. foreign policy is horrible. The Iraq War ended, all right? We pulled out of there. Afghanistan ended. We don't have any active wars going on with U.S. involvement in the Middle East, unless you count literally any kind of, like, foreign aid, whether militarily or, you know, aid-wise, to be involvement. But I don't think I would necessarily count that. Like, we don't have horrible foreign policy right now under Biden. You can't point towards something that happened in the past and then use that as an example of why something right now is bad. If our foreign policy changes, if our actions changes, if societal attitudes change, you can't just sit there and use something that has already ended to justify in covering news a different way now.
Now let's look at I'm going to suggest what to actually do. I'm going to be constructive. But first, let's look at the unconstructive solution that Israel
is poor.
Dropping bombs on residential buildings. 50 ambulances have been hit. 10 out of 25 hospitals don't operate anymore. The incubators are about to run out of energy. There's 45 babies that might die today. The parents, I just read on CNN, are writing the names of the kids on their calves, on their legs, so that if they are killed in a bombing and they're mutilated, they could find their bodies. Imagine writing the name of your child on their legs so that you could find them in the rubble after Israel or any government drops a bomb on them. And I need the West to understand something. Bombs kill people. And do you know how they kill people? They incinerate them alive.
Hot take there, Cenk. Hot take there. Did you guys know? Hold on. Let's do some fact checking. What do bombs do? What do bombs do? Let's go to the Wikipedia. A bomb is an explosive weapon that uses exothermic reaction of an explosive material to provide an extremely sudden and violent release of energy. Yeah, they kill people. No shit. Do you think that people think when they hear Israel is bombing Gaza, like, oh, well, you know, they're dropping care packages over there? What do you think the average, like, I know the average American is, like, pretty compared to other nations, okay? I won't, like, pretend like that's not true. But can we give a little bit more credit to the people in the West for knowing at least what a bomb does? Also, they don't incinerate you alive. It is just like pure force most of the time, unless it is a literal incendiary bomb, right? It's not like they're dropping just like napalm all over Gaza, okay? They're blowing them to bits, but they're not melting them, okay? Let's get that right. This isn't a...
Oh, guns kill. Is that right? Well, let's see about that. Okay, gun, kill. Go ahead, kill someone. Don't be shy. See? Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Guns defend people against people with smaller guns.
True. Let's see if I get copyright struck for that.
Or their heads explode. So what happened in Israel was a disaster and disgusting. But you have to be equally honest and equally outraged at the immorality of incinerating babies and grandmothers and aunts and uncles, which is what we're doing right now. America cannot keep sending aid for death and destruction. Enough of the occupation. End it today. End it today. It's monstrous. Okay, I'm going to get.
Let me ask you.
Okay, this is where I like hardcore disagree with Cenk. No, we're not ending the occupation today. That is, Hamas has made that impossible. Impossible. It is now impossible for Israel to end the occupation on peaceful terms. Because the last time that happened, right? The last time Israel was just like, oh, well, you know what? We're out of here. We're not going to occupy Gaza anymore. I've said this every single time on stream that this has come up. Hamas claimed credit, and they, for the one and only time in their entire history, got majority support in Gaza. They won the election, and they never allowed another election to happen. And then Gaza has been worse off ever since. Every single time there is the possibility of new infrastructure aid to come in, right? Oh, okay, well, we're going to let concrete come in so that you guys can rebuild housing, so you guys can build water desalination plants, et cetera, et cetera. Every single time that happens, what does Hamas do? They take the concrete, they use it to build their tunnels underground, like billions of dollars worth of concrete that they use to build their tunnels so that they can move soldiers and move missiles around without getting destroyed by the IDF. So what does the IDF do in response to that? Okay, well, we're not going to allow any more concrete to go into Gaza. We're just not going to let it happen. Isn't it the bombing he's talking about? Well, yeah, he's talking about the bombing right now. Yeah.
Do this. Let me. I completely understand your passion and your anger. I completely get this. I, like you, want to see some resolution at the end of this horror that we're witnessing. How do you get rid of Hamas if you don't do it the way Israel are currently doing it? How do you actually eradicate what has become a nihilistic ISIS-style terror group?
Yes, this is the question that you have to ask. If this isn't the way, then how? What is the best practice? What is the best way that Israel could respond here? I haven't seen a good response to that. There's obviously got to be some better way. There's got to be. There's got to be. But what is it? Because I'm not a military tactician. I'm not a military, guru. I don't know what the best way to take out an insurgent group inside of their own, highly populated, highly dense city setting that they're based out of, where they actively use civilians as cover, right? Like, what would be the appropriate response right there, Damn it, I clicked the dodge button. There we go.
Quite deliberately, in my estimation, committed an outrage of such appalling scale that they knew that this would goad Israel into this kind of response. So why they did that, what is motivating it, who might be putting them up to it, who's helped them prepare for this, these are all questions we don't know the answers to yet. But it seems to me that Israel could, if it's not careful, be being lured into a massive trap here. And I hope that is not the case. But I'm curious, how do you get rid of Hamas if you don't do it the way Israel is currently doing it, albeit with horrific collateral damage in the face of thousands of innocent Palestinians being caught up in the bombing?
Yeah. So let me give you a short-term answer, long-term answer. And a lot of people are not going to like these, but these are realistic ways that you minimize civilian casualties. You do what America did with the Osama bin Laden raid. We didn't go drop a nuke on Pakistan. We didn't go destroy 6,000 residential buildings.
Because we knew exactly where he was. And weren't there civilian casualties during the Osama bin Laden raid? Like, I'm pretty sure. Like, I'm like 90% positive there was at least like one or two people that were killed that were non-combatants, because the Navy SEAL team that went in, you know, they're going to shoot anyone that even looks like they might be able to like hide a gun. No, they didn't just like go in and blast every single person, right? Because I believe that there were like, there were women and children in there, so they didn't blast all the women and children as well. But like, let's not pretend like we weren't dropping bombs on places that did have civilians nearby, at least. Okay.
In the middle of Pakistan, we sent in special forces. Is it more dangerous to the special forces? Of course. That's the point of special forces.
But also, and maybe I have this wrong, right? But one of the reasons that Israel hasn't put boots on the ground is because Hezbollah said if they put, you know, if they do any kind of ground invasion into Gaza, then they're going to invade from the north. Do I have that correct, or am I wrong? Because I'm pretty sure I'm right on that, but that might go into the calculation of why they're not putting any like IDF soldiers on the ground, unless that's changed. I actually don't know. Didn't they send a small tank force into Gaza? If they have, send me a news clip on that.
Try to find the hostages. Does it look like Israel's trying to find the hostages? If I have a family member that's a hostage, I'm disgusted by what Netanyahu's doing now. How do you know they're not in the buildings you're dropping bombs on? How do you know they're not in the tunnels you're dropping bombs on? How do you know they're not in the hospitals you're dropping bombs on?
Also, the tunnels, it is almost impossible for Israel to drop bombs to collapse the tunnels because they're 100 feet underground. And I think that the most common like bunker buster that the IDF has can only penetrate down like 30 feet. They have one that can penetrate deeper, but it's like a 60-ton bomb that costs like $6 million or something dollars, or probably, I'm sorry, did I say 6 million? I think like $60 million or some shit like that, some crazy high number to drop every single one of those bombs. So it's going to be significantly more expensive to try and like destroy the tunnel networks. So if they're in the tunnels, they're probably safe from any IDF bombings. Okay, let's get that one clear right now. If you're a hostage of Hamas, you want to be in those tunnels right now. Okay.
So this, if you want the hostages rescued,
oh shit,
every rational human being can agree this is not the way to do it. This is the way to do death and destruction for the sake of death and destruction. It's collective punishment. It's genocide against Palestinians.
This is just so wrong.
And the world
this
has
right here
to speak out. So
absolutely incorrect.
My way is not pleasant either. It involves a lot of folks dying on both sides. I understand that. Those are super hard choices. But go find Hamas. Go find the hostages. Go rescue them instead of wantonly, indiscriminately, killing after killing. And let's be honest, when you drop a bomb and a kid's head explodes and a grandmother is incinerated, that is terrorism. Killing 3 times as many civilians as Hamas is terror.
I'm sorry. I just don't. There should be a more reasonable way to look at this than what they're presenting here. I'm sorry, there is a more reasonable way, but they should be trying to look at it in a more reasonable way. How do they do that? Right? Israel is being like highly pressured from like places like the U.S. and places like NATO and the UN to not, go balls to the wall and just glass the place, even though Israel probably wants to, right? But it's good that the U.S. is there as, a counterbalance saying, hey, listen, we made some mistakes back in the day, back in Afghanistan, right? If someone could link me the speech from Biden where he talked about his meeting with Netanyahu and other officials in Israel, where he said, we made a lot of mistakes because we went too hard, too fast. We went too hard, too fast into Afghanistan, into Iraq. We made massive mistakes, and you should not make those same mistakes. You should not, because there's no excuse for them, because we're here to tell you what those are. Oh, shit, I just realized the freeze frame on Cenk's face is pretty good. But the liquefied grandmas, right? But like, again, how do you, like, Hamas has a missile launcher, right? Shooting missiles into Israel. How do you avoid civilian casualties when they are using civilians as shields, right? I know it sounds like, oh, we've heard all of this about Hamas. We've heard all this about Hamas, how they're using human shields. The whole thing about human shields is you don't shoot through the human shields. Then you never, ever, ever, ever respond militarily, ever, to actual terrorists. Like, what is the response then? All you can do is do those knock bombs, which they've stopped using, which I think they probably still should use. You use the knock bombs. You tell people, hey, this building's about to come down because there's a giant missile launcher shooting at us in there. If you don't want to get bombed, get the out, right? You have 10 minutes to leave, and then you get to destroy that missile launcher, right? There probably needs to be some sort of ground incursion into Gaza to take out all of the Hamas agents in there, right? But they've been bombing like and they've been taking out some of the higher ranked officers in Hamas, right? And now you just gotta keep on doing that until they decide to no longer be a legitimate force, right? Until they don't have the capacity anymore. And that's basically all you can do until such a time as like all you can do is just like try and take out as many of them as possible, right? And not negotiate with terrorists because they have this penchant for taking credit for any kind of peaceful negotiations that come out of terrorist attacks, which incentivizes what? More terrorist attacks.
Terrorism. And it is the same if it is done by a government. Send in as many special forces you got. We should send in whatever you got to actually do the job at hand instead of what Netanyahu is doing, which is to kill these people to what? Send a message. And think about how unrealistic that is. And think about why
The other thing is, like, for all of these things, you're going to have to show the intent, right? You're going to have to show the intent. If there was actual proof of some kind of intent behind the October 6th, or I'm sorry, 7th attacks, right? That they were predominantly focusing on military and governmental forces, something like that, right? And then there was, that many civilian casualties, but there wasn't all this brutality. It didn't seem like that was the main target of what they were trying to do. It was either, blatant disregard would also be pretty bad. But that would still be less bad than like intentionally targeting civilians, right? The intentionality behind targeting the civilians is the extremely excruciatingly disgusting part of what the Hamas terrorists did on October 7th, right? But most of the time, Israel is able to show, hey, we have evidence that there was Hamas being in this building, right? Shooting missiles out of it, right? We have evidence that this was an ammo storage depot, right? We have third party, like UN officials who have gone in and said, hey, this is a UN school that we are providing for free to the children of Gaza, and Hamas is using it to store their missiles. Hamas, take your missiles out of our elementary school, please. This is not what this is supposed to be for. So it's not like Israel is just like making this shit up. There's third-party international organizations that are like, hey, not for you, Hamas, not for missiles, for learning ABCs, not for missiles. Tank incursion. Okay, I'll click on it in a second.
This method has a 0% chance of working. How are the Palestinians supposed to rise up against Hamas? How would they prove they're against Hamas? Hamas ended all elections. Hamas ended democracy. So how are the Palestinians supposed to cry uncle? They're already crying uncle, but it's never enough for the bloodthirsty Netanyahu. No more.
The Palestinians, shut the up, you. Actually, the Palestinians have been calling uncle for a long time. Yeah, no shit. It's the fact that Hamas hasn't, and that they're not only not calling uncle, they're actively attacking on a semi-regular basis Israel. On a semi-regular basis, they're attacking Israel and warranting a response from the Israeli government. The Palestinian people don't want that. The Israelis don't want that. But you know who does want that? Hamas, the terrorist group. The actual oppressors of the Palestinian people.
More death of Palestinians, more babies killed. That's what his answer is. And it's this, and the United States of America, I'm running for president here. There's no way in the world I would allow this. Sending $105 billion. And it doesn't even go to Israel, Ukraine, or Taiwan. It goes to the defense contractors that bribe these greedy American politicians and then get most.
Also, that's not even true, especially with Ukraine. Like, the defense contractors, they might be paying for bombs for us to resupply ourselves, right? But we're giving them our old bombs because otherwise they would expire. They would lose efficacy after being in storage for too long, and then we would have to blow them up ourselves and just waste money. Now these bombs are going to kill people that are actually bad people, like the Russian military or, Hamas, people that deserve to get bombed. Believe it or not, some people deserve to get a JDAM missile blown up on them. And I would count most terrorists as the kinds of people that deserve the JDAMs on their front door.
Most of that money. And so the long-term answer is...
Am I wearing army fatigues? I got this shirt when I went to Italy. It has a UN patch right here. Let's go. On the other side, it's Austria, which could be better. There could be a better patch than Austria. But, I saw the UN patch, and I was like, I gotta get that. Yeah, it's probably fake, okay? Another idiot that hasn't a clue what he's talking about. Yeah, I mean, number one, I want to say this. I add enough qualifications to everything that I say that there is definitely stuff that I don't know about in this conflict. But number two, if you think that something that I'm wrong on, if there's something that I'm wrong on, jump in Discord, okay? What does the title say? Open call-ins later. I'll open them up right now for you, KP, all right? And lastly, yes, the shirt's probably a fake. I got it in a random market, okay? I didn't get it because I wanted it to be an actual real shirt. I thought the UN patch was cool, all right? Yeah, IDF uniform, let's go.
1967 borders. And
yeah, I'm actually thinking about getting an Israeli patch to put like right here, and then a an Israeli flag right here, and then a Ukrainian one right there. I thought that not because the UN one I thought would be really good for triggering people like the KP guy. But if I got the Israel and the Ukrainian patch, can you imagine how triggered people would get over this fake ass army surplus shirt that I got in a random market for $20? Dude, based. Did you buy a Rolex for $20? Not fake, but it's just as cheap.
The biggest walls you've ever seen
I have
in
no
your
idea what
entire
you're trying
life.
to say there.
And no one's allowed to cross to either side. But the
who do that unironically? Yeah, I'm doing it ironically, obviously, because I don't think I need to have a patch on my shirt to show support. Another idiot that hasn't got it. Listen, if you're talking about Cenk, then based. But you have to understand when there's people coming into my chat on a regular basis saying that I'm a bloodthirsty, want to kill Palestinians, right? When there are people who are unironically like bloodthirsty Zionists that I have to ban because they're talking about Israelis should be able to Arab women in retaliation. Like, it's kind of hard to read intentions or have good charitability for random chatters who I've never seen before. All right.
Palestinians get their state.
Get
It is unconscionable for them
really
not to get their state.
people.
And if you're a moral person, of course you believe that the Palestinians are not the only people in the world that cannot govern themselves. If you say that, you are being, by definition, bigoted and
Wait, hold on.
racist.
Let me scroll back to what he's saying here. Wait, who is unable to govern themselves?
Unconscionable for them not to get their state. And if you're a moral person, of course you believe that the Palestinians are not the only people in the world that cannot govern themselves. If you say that, you are being, by definition, bigoted and a racist.
You could make all of the points that he's making in such a more in a calmer and better calmer tone, better framing. Your point would be accepted by so many more people. It would be the exact same point, right? Like, Israel does horrible things to the Palestinian people. This is something that we all need to understand. While I recognize that there is no path forward while Hamas is in control, while I recognize that, we have to be able to be critical of the Israeli government going in and dropping bombs seemingly indiscriminately, bombing entire city blocks and destroying those areas because they say that there are Hamas agents. We need some sort of third-party third-party observers there to make sure that Israel is actually only doing things that are militarily or like achieving their military objectives. Otherwise, this will lead to the just wanton killing of civilians all over the Gaza Strip. And to those that would say that the Palestinian people are just wholesale in support of genociding Israelis and Jews abroad, I would say this. We can look at polling, we can look at the general attitudes of people in Palestine and in the West Bank towards Hamas, and we can see that they don't think that this is the best path forward. However, when there is no other alternative and when they have no power to take these people out themselves, to oust them from power and to choose their own path going forward, we have to find some way to achieve some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Self-determination for themselves, some sort of self-governance. To say otherwise, right? To say that these people are simply ungovernable, that these people are uniquely unable to govern themselves, would be atrocious and bigoted, you know? Too many sheep in this world? I don't know if you, again, you have to like let me know if you're talking about me or if you're talking about Cenk, okay? I can't tell. I don't get why he isn't calmer here. He's done this for too long to seem this hysteric. Well, I think that being the video, not you. Okay, gotcha. This kind of passion, I think, does well sometimes, but you have to choose, right? You have to be more. You got to be more tactical. All right, you have to earn the passion, right? You have to earn being unhinged. You have to earn being smug. You have to earn all of these like more unsavory optical things, right? Because if you're smug in a conversation with someone, it can look really bad, especially if you're unambiguously wrong. If you're smug and about the fact that you're talking about, then yeah, you're gonna look really bad, right? But if the other person is just like blatantly like evil or blatantly wrong about something and you're smug about it, you can look really good by being smug. It's all about picking and choosing when you decide to show certain emotions and stuff, right? Now, sometimes that's hard, right? Sometimes I'll freak the f- out. Like, listen, I can admit right now, when I flipped the f- out on the Panda Man guy, right? For the disgusting statements that he said about Palestinians and Arabs in general, I went too far. Okay, I'll be the first to admit I privated that live stream. I said some things I certainly should not have said. Okay, certain phrases about buying a length of rope and then going to the rickety stool store, right? Grabbing the nearest rusty knife and drawing a Z into your stomach with it, hilt deep. You know, these sorts of things are unacceptable. Sometimes it's really hard to control your emotions when you're really, really pissed, right? But I think that in a different setting, had I seen those remarks, right? Like if I was on international television, I probably would have, you know, been a little less hysterical. I probably would have chosen my words a lot more carefully. You know what I mean?
We have to have two-state solution immediately. Immediately. If 56 years of occupation and brutalizing these people is not enough, is 57 years going to be enough? Is 156 years going to be enough? I'm asking Israel, not out of hate, out of love.
And like, if you're going to make all these points, which some of these points are totally valid, if you're going to make some of these points, you also have to, like, either give some alternative that is feasible, right? Not just like send in special forces to take out the 45,000 members of Hamas there are, right? Which is a completely unfeasible task, right? You're not going to destroy 45,000. Wait, let me double check that number because I've seen that number. How many people Hamas? Let's see. Oh, wrong corner. There we go. How many people are in Hamas? Okay, I was a little bit off. 20,000 or 25,000. Even on that scale, you're not going to send in a couple squads of Israeli Navy SEALs and take them out, right? That is completely unfeasible in every sense of the word. There's no way you're going to take out that many people. You're not even going to take out all of the leadership with just a couple of squads of Navy SEALs, right? Your casualty rate is going to be higher, right? And you just won't have the personnel to achieve any kind of real outcome. So you have to think, what is the acceptable response? And I would love to see what the actual acceptable response is. I don't think we're going to get a good response here. I don't think that there's going to be anyone that can even approximate. I don't think there's going to be anyone who can even approximate a reasonable or good response that would actually get rid of Hamas in the near future, right? When there has to be a response sooner rather than later. There is no path towards peace with Hamas surviving. They have to go. And I mean that not just because Israel won't accept it. I'm saying it because they won't allow it. They won't allow it. When Piers Morgan said this is a terrorist group that has become a nihilistic ISIS style jihadist group, that's absolutely accurate. It is so unbelievably accurate. When you are willing to actually sacrifice everyone around you to instigate, seemingly, like this is the I'm regurgitating opinions that I've seen from people who are smarter than me, who know more about the conflict, who know more about jihadist groups, right? When seemingly their goal is to instigate a broader regional conflict to try to completely eradicate the state of Israel, right? Not to get specific concessions about like this or that, right? But like literally to just simply destroy Israel, right? And bring in a bunch of other Arab nations into it when they don't really even seem that interested in joining into this themselves, right? Or letting in, like even at the very least, letting in Palestinian refugees when you don't even have that from them, right? Like how are you going to achieve peace going forward? You have to get rid of the actual cancer and do like a sort of chemotherapy on on Gaza to get rid of Hamas, right? And the way you do that with the least amount of civilian casualties, I cannot say. All right. I'm under 30 years old. I've never been in any kind of military setting. I don't have a answer about that. I just don't. But unless you do, then you need to like shut the fuck up on telling everyone how there's a genocide going on in Gaza, because the perpetrators of that genocide are Hamas. Okay.
So many of my friends that I grew up with are Jewish. This is not good for them. This is not good for anybody.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me just read this really quick. I've heard you need about 5 times the numbers if you're going ground offensive like Israel is doing, especially if the fighting. I've heard, I know what you're talking about, right? If you're going to occupy an area and then try to achieve some sort of military aim, you need like some significant force there, right? And I don't know. You're saying 5 times the numbers. Is that 5 times the numbers of the enemy combatants, or is that 5 times the numbers of the people living in that area? Because I've heard 3 times the number of the people in occupied areas, right? I've heard that before for sure, but I have not heard 5 times the number. But either way, like if it's civilians, if it's 5 times the number of civilians, bro, you're never going to get that in Gaza. All right. This is one of the most densely packed places in the entire world. All right. Like 2.2 million people crunched into square mileage, or let's do Gaza square. The Gaza Strip is 25 miles long and 3.7 to 7.5 miles wide, right? 141 square miles. That is not very many miles to pack 2.2 million people in, you know?
Please look into your hearts. Look and be the.
Should we be taking in Palestinians, refugees? I could hear arguments for both sides. The humanitarian soft feels sides of me says there should be a path towards refugee status for some people in Palestine who don't have connections to Hamas, whether it's the political arm or the militant arm. Like that would be like a really good faith showing of how we could say we do not want Israel to kill too many Palestinians. Like that would be a really good thing that we could do. But at the same time, I don't know what the. Oh, I'm so. Okay. This is irritating me. Yeah. We have been taking in 100,000 less than we are able to the past 2 to 3 years. Like that's the feel side of me. The real side of me, or like the intellectual side of me says we could, but you know what? I'll say this. Yeah, we should. But we're gonna have to like really heavily check who we're bringing in, right? I know we already have like some pretty stringent guidelines and restrictions on people who are coming in from the Middle East as refugees, right? It's not easy to enter the United States as a refugee from the Middle East, right? We saw that in the Syrian refugee crisis. We took in less than basically any European nation. But we might have to add like some like extra sauce on those restrictions, especially given that Hamas is so deeply integrated into like blending in with civilians, because that's how they operate. That's how they must operate necessarily to not get wiped out, you know? I would say no, I don't want the US to burn like France did. I would even accept temporary, like only temporary refugee status with no path towards citizenship. You know, I would accept that for the short term to get some people out of there. But I could be pushed on that. Yeah, I could be pushed on that pretty easily. But I think that the United States does a lot better of a job of integrating immigrants into into our culture, and bringing in immigrants in and having them, you know, buy into American ideals than places like France or the UK or Germany have. I don't know why that is. I'm not a globetrotter. I've never been to France. Technically I've stopped through Germany on my one trip out of the country in my entire life on my way to Italy, right? So I can't speak to like the attitudes of people or how they integrate people into society. But I think that the U.S. does a lot better of a job at it.
The moral people that I know you can be. I've been to Passover dinners where you pray for your oppressors. Now, it breaks my heart, but I got to tell you, you got to pray for those you are oppressing. And to say that you are not oppressing the Palestinians after brutalizing them for 56 long years, you're kidding yourself. And as a friend and an ally, I'm trying to get you to wake up and snap out of this trance. You cannot keep doing this. It is ruining your moral fiber.
Cenk Uygur, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. I'm sorry it was your first appearance on this programme under these circumstances, but I hope it won't be your last. I think you're an important voice in this, and I do appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, I've really appreciated Oh, one second. Let me message editor. Oh, yeah. By the way, editor segment. There you go. Cut, clip, ship, etc., etc. Not tech savvy enough to explain or even know what the issue is. Also, I have to agree with you, Sondsol. Cenk is not very convincing. That screaming just does not work for me. It feels fake.